The warning line Captain Zara Voss had navigated the star lanes for 20 years. Her violet-scaled hands steady on the controls of more starships than most beings saw in a lifetime. She'd guided massive cargo haulers through the crystalline asteroid. Fields of Zarian Prime threaded diplomatic vessels past the war fleets of the Corvan Empire, and even piloted a scientific survey ship into the swirling chaos of the Maelstrom Nebula. There wasn't a trade route, shipping lane, or hidden passage in the known galaxy that she hadn't charted or traveled. But there was one place that every navigator, regardless of species, refused to plot courses toward. Every star chart, from the crude metal etchings sold in backwater ports to the sophisticated holographic displays in the Galactic Trade Coalition's finest vessels, showed the same thing. Beyond a certain point in the outer rim, the mapped territory simply ended, not gradually, not with scattered outposts growing thinner and more distant. It ended abruptly, like someone had drawn a line across the galaxy and declared everything beyond it forbidden. The official designation on navigation computers was Quarantine Zone 7, but every spacer, trader, and pilot knew it by its common name, the Dead Zone. And at the center of that zone, according to the oldest records, lay the homeworld of the most feared species in the galaxy. Humans. Zara first noticed the pattern during her early years as a junior navigator aboard a collective transport ship. Whenever the senior navigator, a grizzled old Mentarian with cyber-enhanced eyes, plotted long-range courses, he would pause whenever his calculations approached the edge of the dead zone. His clawed fingers would hover over the navigation console. For a moment, then he would always choose a longer route, sometimes adding days or even weeks to their journey. When Zara asked about it, the old navigator's response was always the same, a slow shake of his reptilian head and a single word: humans. As she advanced in her career and gained access to higher-level shipping manifests and military briefings, Zara learned that the pattern extended far beyond simple navigation preferences. The Galactic Trade Coalition maintained a fleet of monitoring stations positioned along the edge of the dead zone. But these stations were staffed remotely and rotated their crews every 30 days. No being, regardless of species or military rank, was permitted to serve more than a single tour at these outposts. The Corvan Empire, known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive expansion policies and willingness to conquer any world with valuable resources, maintained a buffer zone of 3 full star systems between their territory and the dead zone. The Zephyrians, whose philosophy centered on knowledge and exploration, had classified every piece of information about the dead zone at their highest security level. Even the nomadic Voidwalkers, who claimed no permanent territory and traveled freely through the most dangerous regions of space, were known to alter their migration routes to avoid the area entirely. It made no sense. Humans had been absent from galactic affairs for over 2 centuries. According to the historical records, they had been a relatively minor species when they first made contact with the Galactic Trade Coalition. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards, their population small, and their territorial claims limited to a single star system. They had participated in trade agreements, sent diplomatic missions to other worlds, and seemed to be following the standard pattern of newly contacted species slowly integrating into galactic civilization. Then, without warning or explanation, they had withdrawn. All human ships had returned to their home system. All diplomatic missions had been recalled. All trade agreements had been quietly dissolved. Within a period of 6 standard months, every human presence in galactic space had simply vanished. And since that time, no ship that entered their territory had ever returned. The official explanation: distributed by the Galactic Trade Coalition's information services, was that humanity had chosen voluntary isolation. The implication was that they had decided to focus on their own development rather than participate in galactic affairs. It was unusual, but not unheard of. Several species throughout galactic history had gone through similar periods of isolation before eventually rejoining the broader galactic community. But Zara had noticed something that the official reports didn't mention. Every species that had ever encountered humans, even briefly, had developed the same reaction to their territory. Not curiosity, not concern about their welfare, but fear. Deep, bone-chilling fear that transcended species barriers and cultural differences. The kind of fear that made hardened military commanders choose longer, more dangerous routes rather than approach the edge of human space. Her opportunity to learn more came during a routine cargo run to Nexus Station, one of the major trading hubs in the Outer Rim. While her ship's cargo was being unloaded, Zara made her way to the station's archives section. Nexus Station had been operating for over 4 centuries, and its databanks contained shipping records, news reports, and personal accounts from thousands of different species and time periods. She spent hours sifting through files, looking for any mention of humans or the events leading up to their withdrawal from galactic society. Most of the records were routine: trade manifests, diplomatic correspondence, and cultural exchange programs. But buried deep in the personal logs of a Zephyrian explorer named Elder Theron, she found something different. Theron had been part of one of the last official delegations to visit human space before their withdrawal. His log entries from that period painted a picture of a species that was far more complex and potentially dangerous than the official records suggested. According to his account, humans possessed what he called adaptive warfare capabilities that allowed them to quickly analyze and counter any threat they encountered. More disturbing, they seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to predict their enemies' actions and develop countermeasures before conflicts even began. But the most chilling entry in Theron's logs was his description of a conversation with a human military commander named General Harrison. When asked about humanity's long-term goals in galactic society, Harrison had given a response that Theron recorded word for word. "We're not here to conquer anyone. We're here to make sure that if someone tries to conquer us, they understand why that was a mistake." Theron's final log entry from his visit to human space was brief and disturbing. "They are kind and generous hosts. They share their knowledge freely and seem genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. But there is something in their eyes, a calculating intensity that suggests they are constantly evaluating every person they meet, every situation they encounter, every potential threat to their survival. They have turned preparedness into an art form, and I suspect that their true capabilities are far beyond what they have shown us. I pray that no one is ever foolish enough to find out what happens when humans decide that diplomacy has failed." Reading Theron's account, Zara began to understand why the galaxy feared human space. It wasn't just the mystery of their withdrawal or the disappearance of ships that entered their territory. It was the growing realization that humanity might have withdrawn not because they were weak or afraid, but because they were protecting everyone else from discovering just how dangerous they could be. But understanding the source of the fear only intensified Zara's curiosity. She had spent her entire career navigating through dangerous situations, and the idea of an entire species that had chosen isolation to protect others was both fascinating and deeply troubling. If humans were truly as dangerous as the elder races seemed to believe, What had motivated them to choose restraint over conquest? And what had happened to the ships that had ventured into their territory over the past 2 centuries? The more she researched, the more questions arose. She discovered that several independent exploration vessels had attempted to breach the dead zone over the years, but none had ever returned. More puzzling, long-range sensors positioned along the boundary detected no debris fields, no distress signals, no evidence of destruction. The ships simply vanished as if they had never existed. Some of the more paranoid military analysts theorized that humans had developed weapons capable of completely annihilating matter, leaving no trace of their targets. Others suggested that human space was protected by some form of advanced stealth technology that prevented detection of ships entering the area. But Zara suspected that the truth might be far simpler and far more complex than anyone realized. During her research, she came across a fragment of an ancient human transmission that had been intercepted and decoded by coalition intelligence services shortly before humanity's withdrawal. The message was brief and had been broadcast on multiple frequencies to our galactic neighbors. We withdraw not in hostility, but in hope. Some gifts are too dangerous to share, and some knowledge too terrible to spread. We choose silence so that you may continue to sing. The poetic nature of the message was strikingly different from the typical military or diplomatic communications used by other species, but the implications were deeply unsettling. What kind of knowledge or capability could be so dangerous that an entire species would choose isolation rather than risk sharing it? And why would they consider their withdrawal a gift to the galaxy? As Zara prepared to leave Nexus Station and return to her regularly scheduled shipping routes, she made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find out what lay beyond the dead zone. She was going to discover what had happened to humanity and why their mere existence struck fear into the hearts of species across the galaxy. She was going to cross the line that every navigator knew never to cross. But first, she needed a ship that could make the journey, and she needed to ensure that if something happened to her, someone would eventually know what she had discovered. She began making preparations for what might be the most important and most dangerous navigation mission of her career. Into the void. 3 months after her discovery at Nexus Station, Captain Zara Voss stood on the bridge of her newly acquired exploration vessel, the Star Whisper. She had spent nearly all of her savings purchasing the ship from a decommissioned coalition survey fleet. It wasn't the most advanced vessel she'd ever piloted, but it was fast, reliable, and most importantly, it was equipped with long communication arrays and extended life support systems that would allow her to survive. For weeks in deep space without resupply, she had filed a flight plan claiming that she was conducting a routine survey mission in the Outer Rim territories. Officially, her destination was a series of uninhabited systems that were being considered for future mining operations. But her true course would take her directly toward the edge of the dead zone, and, if she was right about her calculations, into human space itself. As the Star Whisper moved away from the last Coalition monitoring station, Zara felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She was violating not just Coalition regulations, but a universal understanding that had kept the galaxy stable for over 2 centuries. Every species, from the most advanced to the most primitive, respected the boundary around human space. She was about to become the first being in living memory to deliberately cross that line. The journey to the edge of the dead zone took for days. During that time, Zara monitored all communication frequencies, listening to the gradual fade of galactic civilization as she moved further from the established trade routes and shipping lanes. By the third day, the only signals reaching her ship were automated beacon transmissions from navigation buoys and the occasional burst of encrypted military communications from coalition patrol vessels. On the fourth day, even those signals faded to nothing. The Star Whisper was flying through a region of space that was, for all practical purposes, completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The silence was unlike anything Zara had ever experienced. Space was never truly quiet. There was always some form of background chatter, whether from commercial traffic, scientific broadcasts, or the constant stream of data transmissions that connected the thousands of worlds and stations across galactic civilization. But here there was nothing. Just the gentle hum of her ship's engines and the soft whisper of air through the life support systems. It was both peaceful and deeply unsettling. According to her navigation calculations, she crossed into what was officially designated as human territory on the fifth day of her journey. She had expected something dramatic: warning signals, patrol, ships, or at least some indication that she had entered forbidden space. Instead, there was only more silence and the distant light of an unremarkable yellow star that, according to the ancient star charts, was the center of the human home system. As she approached the star system, Zara began detecting artificial objects on her long-range sensors. At first, they appeared to be derelict spacecraft drifting in the outer system, but as she moved closer, she realized they were something far more sophisticated. They were monitoring stations, positioned at regular intervals throughout the system, and clearly designed to detect and track any approaching vessel, but they weren't actively scanning her ship or broadcasting any kind of warning signal. They simply observed, recording her presence with what seemed like calm, professional interest. It was as if someone had been expecting her to arrive. The realization that her approach was being monitored sent a chill through Zara's scales. She had assumed that if humans were still present in this system, they would either challenge her immediately or attempt to drive her away. The patient, almost welcoming nature of their surveillance suggested a level of confidence that was far more intimidating than any aggressive response would have been. As she moved deeper into the system, more artificial structures became visible. Massive orbital platforms surrounded the system's inner planets, their purposes unclear but their scale impressive by any galactic standard. Space elevators stretched from planetary surfaces to orbital stations, and what appeared to be entire cities floated free in space, connected by streams of traffic that suggested a thriving, active civilization. But most impressive of all was the third planet from the Sun, Earth, the legendary human homeworld from space. It was beautiful beyond description. Swirling white clouds covered vast blue oceans, while continents showed the green and brown colors of thriving ecosystems. City lights were visible on the night side of the planet, forming patterns that suggested a population in the billions. This was clearly not the homeworld of a species that had withdrawn from galactic civilization due to weakness or fear. As Zara established orbit around Earth, her communication systems activated without any input from her. A calm, professional voice began speaking in perfect Zephyrian, her native language. "Greetings, Captain Voss. We have been monitoring your approach for the past several days. We understand that you have traveled a considerable distance to reach us, and we appreciate the courage and curiosity that motivated your journey. Please adjust your orbit to the coordinates being transmitted to your navigation system. A representative will meet with you shortly to answer your questions and discuss the purpose of your visit." The precision and courtesy of the message was almost as unsettling as the fact that they knew her name and species. Zara had left no record of her true destination, and there was no way that humans should have been able to identify her or her ship. But somehow they had been prepared for her arrival. Following the transmitted coordinates, Zara found herself approaching what appeared to be a first contact facility, a large space station positioned in high orbit above Earth. The station was sleek and obviously advanced, but its design incorporated architectural elements that suggested it had been built specifically to accommodate visitors from other species. Variable gravity sections, multiple atmosphere types, and docking ports designed for ships of different configurations. As her ship was guided into a docking bay, Zara noticed that the station was not empty. Several other vessels were already docked, and she could see beings of different species moving through transparent corridors within the station. She was not the first alien to reach human space, but none of these beings had ever returned to tell the galaxy what they had found. Docking procedures were smooth and professional. Automated systems guided her ship into position, established atmospheric seals, and began the complex process of matching the environmental conditions between her vessel and the station. Throughout the process, the same calm voice provided updates and assistance, treating her arrival as if it were a routine occurrence rather than a breach of galactic protocol. When the docking was complete, Zara made her way to the airlock, still uncertain about what she would find on the other side. The atmosphere read as compatible with her species' requirements, but she wore her environmental suit anyway, more for psychological comfort than out of any real concern for her safety. The airlock cycled, and Zara stepped into what appeared to be a standard diplomatic reception area. But waiting for her was something she had not expected. A human. The woman was middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and the kind of confident bearing that suggested years of experience in diplomatic situations. She was wearing what appeared to be a formal diplomatic uniform, and her expression was warm and welcoming. "Captain Voss," the woman said, extending her hand in what Zara recognized as a human greeting gesture. "I'm Ambassador Sarah Chen. Welcome to Earth. We've been looking forward to meeting you." Zara hesitantly reached out and briefly touched the human's hand, a gesture that felt both alien and strangely familiar. "Ambassador Chen," she replied, "I have to admit, your welcome is not what I expected." Ambassador Chen smiled. "I imagine not. Please, come with me. We have much to discuss, and I suspect you have many questions about why you're the first being to return from human space in over 2 centuries. As they walked through the station's corridors, Zara was struck by the casual efficiency of everything around her. The architecture was clearly human in design, but it had been modified to accommodate beings of different sizes, anatomies, and environmental requirements. The lighting could be adjusted for species with different visual capabilities. The gravity could be modified for beings from worlds with different conditions. Even the air composition could be customized for different respiratory requirements. This facility, Ambassador Chen explained as they walked, was designed specifically for situations like this. Over the years, representatives of various species have found their way to our territory, usually driven by the same curiosity that brought you here. We meet with them, answer their questions, and help them understand why humanity chose to withdraw from galactic civilization. And then, Zara asked. "Then they choose," Ambassador Chen replied. "They can return to their own territory with a complete understanding of why we maintain our isolation, but with certain restrictions on what they can share with their governments or the general galactic population. Or they can choose to remain here and become part of our community. They entered what appeared to be an observation lounge with a spectacular view of Earth rotating slowly below them. Ambassador Chen gestured toward comfortable seating that had obviously been designed for Zara's species. "The truth, Captain Voss," the ambassador began, "is that humanity withdrew from galactic civilization not because we were afraid of other species, but because we were afraid of what we might become if we remained. You see, humans have a particular talent that makes us extremely dangerous in a galactic community. We are exceptionally good at war." Zara settled into the chair, her violet scales shifting slightly as she processed this information. "Every species is capable of warfare, Ambassador. That's hardly unique to humans." "True," Ambassador Chen agreed. "But most species develop warfare as a response to external threats or resource competition. Humans developed warfare as an art form. We studied it, perfected it, and made it the central organizing principle of our entire civilization for thousands of years. By the time we developed interstellar travel, we had spent millennia learning how to fight, how to adapt to any threat, and how to turn any advantage against our enemies." She gestured toward Earth below them. "When we first encountered galactic civilization, we realized within a matter of months that we could, if we chose to, probably conquer most of the known galaxy. Not immediately, but eventually. Our adaptive capabilities, our strategic thinking, and our willingness to make sacrifices for long-term objectives made us extraordinarily effective at military planning and execution." "But you chose not to," Zara observed. "We chose not to," Ambassador Chen confirmed, "because we also realized that conquest would inevitably change us into something we didn't want to become. So we withdrew. We sealed our territory, developed defensive capabilities that would make any invasion attempt prohibitively expensive, and focused our energies on building the kind of civilization we actually wanted to live in." Zara looked around the comfortable, peaceful station, "and the ships that entered your territory over the past 2 centuries are welcomed just as you have been," the ambassador replied. "Some of their crews choose to return home with our message. Others choose to stay and become part of our community. But all of them understand, by the time they leave, why humanity's withdrawal was not an act of weakness or fear, but an act of love." The word surprised Zara. "Love." Ambassador Chen nodded. "Love for the galaxy we chose to protect by protecting it from ourselves. Love for the species that can continue to grow and develop without having to worry about human expansion or human ambition. Love for a future where conflicts are resolved through diplomacy and cooperation rather than through the application of superior military force." As the day progressed, Ambassador Chen showed Zara more of the station and introduced her to some of the other beings who had found their way to human space over the years. There were scientists, explorers, diplomats, and traders from dozens of different species, all of whom had chosen to remain and become part of humanity's hidden civilization. But the most striking thing about all of them was their sense of peace. These were beings who had found something in human space that they couldn't find anywhere else in the galaxy. A civilization that had consciously chosen restraint over conquest, wisdom over power, and isolation over dominance. When it came time for Zara to make her own choice, the decision was easier than she had expected. She would return to galactic civilization, but she would carry with her the knowledge that humanity's greatest strength was not their capacity for war, but their wisdom in choosing not to use it. She would keep their secret, protect their isolation, and ensure that the galaxy continued to fear the boundary of human space for all the right reasons. As the star whispered departed Earth orbit, Zara carried with her a message that she would never share, but that would guide her for the rest of her life. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to stay away.